Hi, everyone. Today's book talk is all about narrative nonfiction. And of course, these are the stories that are true stories. They are based on the lives of people, and they might be stories that people have written about someone else, and it's been told to them, or they've researched it so that they could write it, or it might have been written by the person who experienced it themselves. But either way, these are often really interesting, fun, really enjoyable, fascinating stories to read because they are true. Before we get into the book talk today, wanted to mention that if you've not yet done so, you might want to be picking up a spring reading challenge sheet either in the library or on Schoology. I guess it's available on our homepage as well. This is something that you can be doing as a way to practice different reading strategies. There's a lot of different fun ways that you can be doing some reading this spring. You're trying to get a bingo on here. You can turn in your sheet when you're done. And it's just a way to get you reading here as we are finishing up our school year. And lots of chances for prizes, fun ways to get you reading. So I'd encourage you to pick one of those up or submit it on Schoology when you're done. Have some fun with that. The first book we're looking at today is in the nonfiction section, of course, and it is They Lost Their Heads. This one is really fun for those of you that love to collect information. You like to have trivia kind of at the ready. Let's take a look at this book video all about this book.
Hello, I'm Carlin Betcha. In my new book, They Lost Their Heads, I follow the adventures of some famous body parts. I'm here at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm here with some of my friends, or part of them. Most biographies, they end with a person's death, but they lost their heads. It begins there. Einstein, there you are. I was just about to tell everyone about George Washington's rotting teeth.
George Washington's teeth were disgusting.
That's true. Okay, fair enough. We'll begin with your story, Einstein. Einstein's brain was stolen during his autopsy in 1955. During the time, his doctor, Thomas Harvey, wanted to save his brain so that future scientists could study it. He sliced up the brain, put it in a mason jar, and put it behind a cooler. At one point, he even stored the brain in his sock drawer. Are you okay, buddy?
The greatest mind in the world, and he puts me in a sock drawer. A sock drawer!
Yeah, maybe we should move on. In They Lost Their Heads, you'll read about several stories and body parts who had some wild misadventures. You'll learn about the king's heart that was saved and then later eaten. You'll learn about a true story of a corpse bride. And also my personal favorite, how Elvis Presley's wart was saved by an adoring fan. Every jarred heart, lock of hair, lopped off ear, preserved bone, or even pieces of a brain have a story to tell. You can find these stories in my book, They Lost Their Heads, at your Scholastic Book Fair.
Wait, come back! Don't leave me alone with these numbskulls.
Obviously, a lot of fun and maybe kind of disgusting information to read about. Check that one out. They Lost Their Heads in the nonfiction section. You go to the 920s to learn more.
Hello.
Our next book is called Drowned City. This one is about Hurricane Katrina and New Orleans, and it's in the graphic novel section. We've actually got quite a few nonfiction books in the graphic novel area. So if you're looking for something along those lines, I'm sharing a few today, but of course you could go there or use our catalog to search up some others. Back in 2005, on August 29th, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, Louisiana. Monstrous winds, a huge amount of water all at one time. And even though there were these levees sort of protecting the city, it was not enough for the amount of water coming into the city at that moment. 80% of the city flooded. In some places, Areas were under 20 feet of water, and as a result, there was so much damage to the city. In fact, it ended up topping over $100 billion, and so many people lost their lives, over 1,800 people, in fact. You can read about the true stories of some of the families and what happened to the city, how the repair started to occur. This was an incredible disaster. Gosh, almost 20 years ago, and to read about this and learn more, but in that graphic novel format, would be a really terrific read to take a look at. This is written and illustrated by the same author, Don Brown, and pick it up in the graphic novel section. Another one to take a look at, My Name is Tani, and this is by the young man who is the star of the show here, the star of this book. Tani Adewumi didn't know why his family was moving all the way from Nigeria to the United States. He was kind of under the impression at the age of 8, being that his family was headed off to this great adventure. Really, they were trying to escape a great deal of warfare happening in his home country. When they arrived in the US, his dad became a dishwasher and an Uber driver to make ends meet. His mom was cleaning buildings, and his family was living in a homeless shelter as they're trying to kind of get themselves on their feet. Well, Tani jumped into his new life with a lot of courage and optimism. He joined the chess club, even though this wasn't something he had done much before. He just practiced his game in the evenings at the shelter and then joined an exclusive club. Eventually, in fact, it was less than a year after he had started playing, he won the New York State Chess Championship. And it became this incredible story, true story, obviously, of sacrificing everything for a family and really living with not much other than just this sense of perseverance and hope. And it's just a very inspiring story. My Name is Tani. You could look this up in our 921 section in nonfiction. Anytime you're looking for a memoir, a biography, an autobiography, you'd go to that 921 section where we have all of those books. Enchanted Air by Margarita Engel. This might be an author who is familiar to you. She's written quite a few things, but this is her story of her own life, and it's written in a poetry style. So the book itself is shorter than what it looks like on the shelf because it's written in kind of that verse format. She talks about growing up as a child of two different cultures, split between Cuba and the United States. Her mom grew up in Cuba, and Margarita sees Cuba as this lush, vibrant island type of culture, a place that she loves and sees as almost this fairy tale world. And most of the time, though, she isn't spending her time in Cuba. She goes back to visit and spends weeks or months at a time. But the rest of the time, she's living in Los Angeles. And she is in that big, noisy city, lots of pollution and that kind of thing, traffic. And she loves that too, but in a different way. And she's dreaming about going back to Cuba to be in that beautiful island culture. And so she's split between these two places all the time, never quite feeling at home in either one entirely. And then she's growing up at the time of the Cold War. So there's this revolution that breaks out in Cuba. And Margarita is really, in living in LA, afraid for her family living in Cuba, where this war is going on. She doesn't quite understand, understandably actually, how it is that these two countries that she loves so much can hate each other. And she doesn't know if she's ever going to get back to visit in Cuba again. The story is Enchanted Air, and it is by Engel. So you'd look in 921ENG. Small Steps by Peg Carrot. Many of you are familiar with this author's books as well. She's written all kinds of adventure stories, in particular those that are written about suspense and kidnapping and that kind of thing. She's sort of known for some of those books. I want to point out the fact on here that this book is about polio. The year I got polio is the subtitle for this one, and the fact that on the slide stated here that the first polio vaccine was available in the United States in 1955, and thanks to that vaccine, the U.S. has been polio free since 1979. Kind of an important thing about this story because Peg Carrot wrote about this, the months that she spent having polio when she was 12. And she was in a hospital with polio. This used to be an incredibly dangerous illness to have. And especially in light of COVID now and vaccines that we've become accustomed to by this point, a really interesting read to notice and to be thinking about, kind of in the light of a pandemic like that. This was similar in some ways for Peg when she was 12 years old, something that put her in the hospital and was doing so for so many other people. Small Steps, take a look at that one in the nonfiction as well. Anne Frank's Diary, this is the graphic novel adaptation. So even though I've placed this in the 921 FRA, that's where you can find Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, which is the book that's listed right there on the bottom right of your slide. Excuse me, the graphic novel can be found in our graphic novel shelves. So you could read either version of this. If you already know something about Anne Frank, you might know that she is one of the most well-known Jewish victims of the Holocaust. She died when she was only 15 years old as a Jewish prisoner of war in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And while she spent most of her life running from the Nazis, it was this diary that she kept while her family and others were in hiding. The graphic adaptation here, the graphic novel version, is something that was authorized by the Anne Frank Foundation, and it actually uses text from her diary, the book that she wrote with her own words, and they've taken that, and with permission from the foundation, they created the graphic novel version. We'll take just a quick look at a trailer just so you can see some of the illustrations in this graphic novel. It's obviously a very serious topic, but if it is a story that is of interest to you, true story, take a look at either one of the books, whether it be the diary itself or the graphic novel. Unsinkable by Jessica Long is the story of a girl born in Siberia with fibular hemimelia. I hope I'm saying that right. She was adopted at an orphanage when she was just 13 months old, but has since become the second most, I guess you'd say, second most decorated, person who is really quite far up there in terms of being a U.S. Paralympic athlete. And as you can see from the images here, she was born without legs, and yet has become this incredible athlete, incredible swimmer. And this story is all about the challenges that came with that, but also how she has managed to dominate in her sport. Incredibly inspiring story. Read this one. It's a nice short read. There's a lot of pictures and illustrations to just show just what an incredible person Jessica truly is. And last but not least, back to our graphic novels section. If you like a collection of stories, this one's called Brazen Rebel Ladies Who Rocked the World. Throughout history, it is very clear that one thing ties together the women that are in this book, and that is that they have a spirit that does not quit. These women raised their voices, they changed history, they were not going to be stopped even when people told them that they couldn't do it because they were female. Um, this woman who has written the book and illustrated it, Penelope Bajou, she has put together all of these incredible portraits of these feisty female role models. Some of them are world famous, and some of them are very kind of under the radar. There's little known about them. So take a look at this one. It's a really fun one to look at. Wouldn't even have to be read cover to cover, but you could certainly pick out some of those that you don't know as much about. It's called Brazen. It's in the graphic novel section, and it's under BAG. I hope that something I shared today looks interesting to you. I do want to mention again, if you've not done so for a while, if you're looking for graphic novels or narrative nonfiction of other sorts, you might want to go to our library catalog button on the library homepage, and then when you scroll down, you can go past that top banner and the topics, and don't forget there is a narrative nonfiction collection. If I click on that here, it's going to bring me to a whole bunch of other ones, some of which I shared today, but some others as well. So if you're looking for something else, that might be helpful. Thanks for your attention. As always, happy reading.